Player 2 has entered the game.
Before DeadSide's pre-release begins today, I think you need to be made aware of all the immersive and realistic gameplay features that this developer has strived to implement in their game. Starting with number 1. And by the way, these will all be from questions the dev team has been asked, hence why I'll be relaying them to you in question form. So, first, what do you mean by hardcore, and how is it addressed in DeadSide? The devs respond by saying mostly the hardcoreness of the game, new word, is about the character's damage system. We're planning to do the damage from firearms and bladed weapons quite significantly, meaning your character can die from a bullet to his head or 1 to 3 shots to his body, depending on the weapon used for causing damage and the armor, if there is any. Also 3 to 5 hits on limbs and 2 to 3 hits with bladed weapons, again depending on where exactly it hits you. So every fight in the game will be not just another reason to have a nice shootout, but also a serious concern for your health. The character's parameters will affect your gameplay. Being tired and all that will actually affect your accuracy of fire. Critical health will also count not only visually against you, but also your accuracy of aim. Apart from that, the way firearms function when you fire them will add some hardcore elements to the game. The recoils will be quite significant, like when firing machine guns, the barrel will lift up quite a bit. Naturally, such parameters as dispersion and the kick will vary for different firearms. They then say, we've already finished working on realistic ballistic systems that will allow penetration of thin-walled hiding places like sheet metal, shingles, wooden sheds, and all that will add to the hardcoreness of the gameplay. So I've got to be honest, I'm zeroing in on the significant damage players can do in a very short time span from that answer, and I always like to ask my viewers, so what do you think? In survival games like DeadSide, is it better to go to that depth of realism when it comes to character damage, or should you give the players more health? Let me know in the poll on your screen now. Oh, and this weekend I'll be releasing brand new DeadSide gameplay tips and how-tos to get you ahead when you start playing, so if that butters your biscuit, consider subscribing to make all your wildest dreams come true. Nah, but for the next realistic feature, it's more of a follow-up question to the first. How will the shooting be implemented in the game? They say the realistic ballistic physics, damn, say that 3 times fast. Anyway, for example, there's a system created for shotguns where you can see multiple shots coming out of the barrel and each flying in their own trajectory. Upon contact with softer materials, which a bullet can penetrate in real life, the bullet will diverge from its course and lose its kill potential, meaning that when going through a thin wooden wall of a shed, you can cause damage to a character behind it. At the same time, when going through a tree, the bullet will be moving on another angle, losing most of its energy, which as a result will affect the damage you might have caused otherwise if you hit a character behind that obstacle. But in each case, whether a bullet penetrates something or not, striking energy decrease depends on the thickness of the material hit by it, and of course from its muzzle velocity. Honest ballistic also implies being able to choose adjusting range correction when using scopes. So if you couldn't tell, they've taken quite an interest into the shooting and gunplay, which in a game like this is a very, very reassuring sign. Next is, how is the weapon improving system being achieved? The weapon improving system, they say, is a set of a number of slots, each corresponding to a certain type of option you can attach to your weapon. You can use a silencer on your weapon, handles, bipods, flashlights, laser pointer, scope, or even a red dot sight. Of course, some slots won't be available on certain weapon models, which I think is a good choice in honor of realism. The next one is pretty standard, but nonetheless necessary. They say, are you going to implement the physical interaction with the environment and vegetation? And they say, just like in any other modern shooter, the characters will be interacting with the environment, falling from heights, being hit by a car, and other things will cause damage to your character, and the damage will depend on how hard you're hit. Grass in the game, just like trees, reacts to global wind, as they call it, which changes its direction and strength. Apart from that, in the future they plan to implement such features as flattening the grass by the character who's laying in it, swaying in the grass when your character is running through it, and things like that. So forewarning, this next piece actually kind of goes against realism, but in a very refreshing way, in my opinion. They ask, what does survival really mean in this game? Which is a pretty solid question. They answer with, most of the players are used to seeing survival in such survival games, and they put in quotations, as the need for a character to find food and water. And yes, in DeadSide, you need to keep your thirst and hunger no lower than a certain minimum for your character to function well, but the game is not just about constantly having to find food. There's a lot more to it than that. That's why we focus on a hardcore shooter with survival elements. Ideally, the focus of the gameplay will be aimed towards shootouts, ambushes, chases, and crafting, not constantly hunting for food. And with a quick follow-up, they come back with, will you also be implementing blood pressure, cold temperatures, frostbite? Will injuries be visualized? The dev team says, visualizing injuries from firearms will be implemented in a classic way by showing blood where a bullet hit you. It is possible that all other injuries will be visualized on your character as well. As for blood pressure, arterial, intraocular tension, intracranial pressure, cold temperatures, frostbite, no. We don't have plans to implement them. We want our player to be focused on dynamic gameplay and not following a bunch of parameters that often will just distract you from the game instead of actually enjoying it. And with both of those questions answered in the way they were, I couldn't be more satisfied. I'm really kind of sick of the food finding simulators and way too in-depth character health systems. So, moving on. Will it be possible to repair broken vehicles? They answer with yes. Some of the vehicles you are going to find in the world will be missing parts, which you will have to locate and install in the corresponding slots. Broken transports can be repaired with a special repair kit, which you can craft yourself, buy from a trader, or change the part that isn't working anymore. I dig it. Anyway, next, do you plan to have character development and thank your applicable deity? They say, no, we do not. We think it is unnecessary in games of this genre, and I'd agree. It'll only increase the difference between the experienced players and newbies, which we do not want, is what they say. A player should only rely on their own skills when playing the game. And bravo to that. Will there be money in the game, and in what form? I actually kind of like this. They say, the money will be there, players will be able to buy their own weapons, ammunition, and other necessary things in green areas from merchants. So far in our view, in-game money is an item that can be carried with you in any quantity and also stored in any container, box, safe, personal cell in the green zone. From time to time, there will be situations where you'll need to move your money from one place to another. For example, take it from your hidden cache somewhere and bring it to the green zone. Such situations will pinch your nerves and give the robbers a chance to get their profit. Yeah, I can see that getting pretty stressful, and also making for a great encounter with other players and an opportunity to strike gold if you steal all their stuff. How do you implement bases, shelters, if you have any? Do you plan to have tents, is the next question. They answer with, we see bases as some sort of outpost, which is a low-rise building or a group of fenced-in buildings. We don't want our player to be building wooden skyscrapers, which will just ruin the atmosphere. This isn't Fortnite, I agree with that. We hope to have two types of stashes, random ones generated by a server at any point in the world and stashes made by players which you can try to rob. Tents will be solely for masking and atmospheric function. You can put your stash into a tent to make it harder to find if your tent is a camo color or has a camouflage net. And by the way, you can also hide your vehicle if your tent is big enough. Didn't even know you could do that. That's pretty cool. Next, they're asked, and what about AI? How advanced will it be? Which is a pretty good question as well. They say ideally we would like our AI to be different from mobs. For example, some mobs could be careful and likely to escape the battlefield or would be fighting to the end and be aggressive toward their enemy. Some mobs could be acting from a distance, like some NPC snipers I would imagine, and could be hiding from players. Time will tell how well we can do this, but we will be doing our best to have NPC, people, and animals behave in ways that are very different if possible. Which, regarding higher levels of AI, what we would like to achieve is the feel of a real world where things just happen, regardless of the player. Be that armed patrols on the road, or accidental meetings generated by the player, or a global NPC mission where cannibals are heading to rob the nearest village. All these activities should make the game more interesting compared to 2 hours of just wandering around the map trying to find a rusty gun. Sick burn, dude. Next, and this is the final one, they say, will the traps be in the game? And I kept this for last because it's actually pretty rad. They say, yes, we plan to develop it quite strongly. Traps in particular should be used by players to guard their hideouts or set up ambushes on roads or some key points on the map, so you should be careful while running and watch your step. And in addition to numerous items that will work as traps, we also plan to implement various devices that can be either purchased, and will be quite expensive, from merchants or found among prize loot on missions. These items will primarily include exotic spy and counter-spy gadgets. For example, a quadcopter with a surveillance camera, a motion scanner, a radio jammer, and other tactical gadgetry that will bring enticing dynamics to PvP battles. By the way, the rarity of such items and their price will be such that it will be inappropriate to take them with you every time. These things will be designed for combat operations in well-coordinated teams. Now, this couldn't have got me more excited to hop in and clap some cheeks with the boys, but for now, check out some more DeadSide videos coming up right now.